people that were incarcerated, and actually one of those people was Rob Farah, and his mother is here today. Rob, unfortunately, didn't work out, but maybe episode 2, I'm really looking forward to meeting Rob. Rob and I shared a lot of, he shared a lot of stories with me, and Rob faced a lot of systemic racism in jail because he's Muslim, and they denied him halal meals. They also put condiments in his, and they put meat in his trays because they didn't like him. So that's what happens in jails when you're not liked. So that's how I met Richard. And then Richard said, you should meet Ben. And I said, who's Ben? He said, Ben's a great guy. Ben worked with me. Ben actually worked with Richard and did his master's. Where did you do your master's?
At UVic.
At UVic. And then he worked on Richard's farm, cultivating local yokel society. There's a few pictures in the documentary with Ben. I don't know if you caught those pictures. But, and then I met Ben. I talked to Ben over the phone, and he perceived my passion. And Ben was really easygoing, and he was one of the first politicians that opened the door and graciously accepted my offer to be interviewed, if he would accept being interviewed, and Ben said yes. And so the challenge for me was getting to Nanaimo, because I don't drive and I didn't have any money and I was broke, but I worked it out. And so Ben is awesome because Ben has worked in corrections, he's worked with youth, and he's worked in the brain injury community. And I remember when I first showed the rough cut to the people at Cridge, one of the people said about Ben, did he read that from a book? I said, what? Who is that guy? I said, that's Ben Gesselbrad. He's the city councilor, Nanaimo city councilor. How did he know all that stuff? Well, Ben's worked in corrections too. So they were astonished that you were so knowledgeable. So why did you participate in this movie? Why was it important to you to do that? Why did you connect with me?
Well, I've got a lot of respect for Richard. He's helped me out a lot throughout the years, and a deep friendship. And you mentioned that you chatted with him, and I think this issue is something that is extremely important. Even before I was on city council with the Power to Be Society as well, and brain injuries, you just see, it's still so under-resourced and acknowledged, and it creates a tremendous amount of suffering. And then, fast forward, you're looking now in the streets, Victoria have the same issue, and denying a lot of the challenges that we're facing is still because, the head injuries are under-acknowledged, and it's just one of those factors that feeds into homelessness and drug addiction, and it's just sort of a festering sore that we haven't sorted out yet. So I think any opportunity to raise awareness about it, and lots of respect for you, Andy, for taking the time and initiative to get these stories out. I think, pumping this out as many different channels and raising awareness and driving this as far as we can go. I like the idea of a movement and getting some legislation put through is a very honorable thing to be doing. So thank you. I'm glad to be part of it.
Thank you, Ben. I'm honored to be connected to you. What happened to your finger?
I cut it in the tail.
Oh, man. So one of the great things about Ben is that I found out through other people, not Richard, but Ben introduced me to another guy named Marcel. And Marcel is also an ex-offender, and Ben has a company, is it a landscaping or?
Tree service.
Tree service. And so he hires ex-offenders for his tree service company. Not only does he hire them, but out of his pocket, he will help them if they can't make rent or if they need something. So that's how amazingly magnanimous Ben is. And so we need more people like this in the world. And again, Ben is able to give these, ex-offenders a second chance. And what is amazing about this is that, and that a lot of people don't acknowledge, is that when you do extend an olive branch or a second chance to someone who's made mistakes, they'll work even harder to keep that job, and they will demonstrate that they are loyal and valuable. In Michigan, they just passed a law called the Clean Bill Slate. think it was about a couple months ago. And so any offender coming out of prison in Michigan after I think a year or two has their record expunged immediately. So they can become productive again. Now here we don't do that. So Jim,
just
yeah.
to quickly add to that, like I definitely am moved by background stories of Richard and that and Marcel, but just building on the point is like working with these gentlemen is like I receive just as much back, and I think it's like a really bad point. It's like these are very valuable, productive individuals, and that I think that we're really missing out if we're not tapping into that potential. And I'm not a saintly person by any stretch of the imagination. Like a lot of times it's business transaction, like Marcel really helps me out, around my house and with the tree service business, and Richard, helped develop this project, with my master's, and so it makes sense all around.
you did give him the opportunity, right?
He helped me out.
Yeah. Okay, so Jim is, when I met Jim and Jim told me his story, I was floored. And the amazing thing about Jim is that, for me, I guess when I still do have a lot of legitimate anger, and I find it really difficult to deal with, and Jim has become my counselor, and Cridge facilitated that for me, and we're working on, I think, 14 sessions now. And if it wasn't for Jim, I'd probably be in jail right now. So, Jim, I owe you a lot, and I really love you, man. You're an amazing person, and there need to be more people like you in this world. And so, why did you participate in this film? Why was it important to you?
Well, I work for the Homelessness Services Association of BC, formerly Shelternet BC. I was one of the original employees, and then I ran Shelternet for 2.5 years by myself. And then we merged with the Greater Vancouver Shelter Strategy and became a much bigger organization. And now we got quite a few employees, so it's kind of nice to have a team. My job is I'm the coordinator of all the training and membership for the province. So I have close to 300 members that are homeless shelters, women's transition houses, and I get calls from them to say, look, we need this kind of training, and we got so many hoarders, that we're dealing with. Can you help us? And so I go and try to find facilitators and trainers, and sometimes it's tough. And I find one, and then I found a UBC professor, and she did our hoarding, the co-occurrences of mental health and hoarding. So that's been my job for 13 years, contributing back to the community. And one of the trainings was the Cridge. I went across Jeff Singh and brain injury, and then I started going, oh my God, I can't believe it. It's brain injury is the big part of it, because I suffered from it. And I mean, there was a time, I'm 46 years clean and sober, so I've been at this stuff for a long time. I got my friend Jimmy here, we've known each other 40 years, eh?
Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
This is my first AA sponsor.
Yeah. I mean, but there was a time when things weren't the best. I was telling somebody a story about yesterday about my sponsor would always sit beside me. I just thought he cared about me, right? But he protected the people, because I would sit there and some guy would get up in the AA meeting and start talking, and I'm going, he's not fucking talking about AA stuff, he's talking about bullshit. talk about A, kind of stuff, right? And then he keep talking about, my dad was a millionaire and this and that. He was talking about it, and I'm going, I'm going to throw a booker out, and my sponsor would grab my arm because I was going to get up and throw him out. I remember this guy named Pack from Winnipeg, and he pulled me back and said, Jump, it's okay. But I was dysregulation, okay, to the max, okay, and I didn't understand it. I just thought, I was angry, that I could check off 10 of the ACEs 10 questionnaires. So, I understood that, and I hadn't seen that before. But this brain injury thing just, when we first had I think it was last year, our first brain injury 101s, and then the personal IPB brain injury with women, and I thought, oh man, this almost makes sense because I spent 26 years as a counselor before I started with HSABC or Shelternet. And I got the job of getting men that come out of prison for beating up their wives, and they did their time, but they're sentenced to go to anger management. And so they go to this place for anger management, and who's running it? Women. And these guys are like, that's the enemy. And so I had a friend that she worked for Family Services, and she would send these guys. I probably counseled 200 or 300 of these guys, and they'd come to me, and I just never got the brain injury part, but I was able to help some of them. Was like, and I heard the C word about 400 million times, and some just like, okay, I can't reach this person, right? But most of them, I'd say about 80% of them, I was able to reach. And it was just through, like this one guy just said, I just say, what did she do to you? Well, what do you mean? Nobody's ever asked me that. I said, no, what did she do to you that made you punch her out? And he was like, lost. He's like, well, what kind of question is that? I said, that's a legitimate question. What did she do? Well, she was always accusing me of having sex with the secretary at work and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now we know why you did it. Not the root cause, of course, not yet. But, as we went along, we started saying, well, my mom did this, and pretty soon it was that. So, in order to regulate, you need a brain that works, especially the frontal lobe, because otherwise you're working out of your amygdala, which is your emotional brain, and that's where I lived out of. Everything was emotional, snap. And I have worked tirelessly, years and years. I started in 1983. I started seeing a counselor named Lila, who was absolute. She was a 60-year-old woman. She was a little granny, and she just loved me. I had no idea. She didn't judge me, and she was a born-again Christian, which I would sit there, and she never said anything. I found out much later, towards the end, that I used to say, yeah, you know what you do with Christians? Just take a knife and cut their hearts out. And, I was a lot of anger towards Christianity, because my family were indigenous. They escaped persecution in Finland, the Sami people, and my grandmother told me this. And they came to America thinking they were going to come to the land of the free, and then they saw how the indigenous people here, the black people, were being treated, and they got scared. My grandma said all the men got afraid, and they made a rule: don't ever speak of being Sami. We are white Christian Finlanders. And so some of them took it to the nth degree. My father became a Ku Klux Klan member, trying to be whiter than white. Of course, alcohol didn't help, but And as you can see on this film, my kids, I made my dad really proud. I got clean and sober and got married and I had kids. I married an African American First Nations woman. She's Tsleil-Waututh is an African American, and my kids are both black. My dad couldn't bridge the gap. He just said, "How are those people?" "Oh, you mean your grandkids, Dad?" He died with it, so anyways. But brain injury is going to be the next explosion I mean, it's been around, but it's just not public. And people like politicians taking it and creating bills, and like we have to, because there's so many, 80%, up to 80% of guys in prison got brain injuries. Holy crap, no wonder we got a big, huge problem. And yes, I'm a bit of a conspiracy guy, conspiracy factist, not a theorist, that there are systems in place because it's a big industry. There's a lot of money involved in the prison industry. Police and judges and everything else. Good God, if everybody just cleaned up and got well, where are they going to work? Right? Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox. I forgot the question you asked.
So to paraphrase, Jim got involved in the film because he wanted to share his story, which is really important for you guys to hear. And so we have to be out of here in about half an hour. So now I want to be able to get Brian's attention if you want to ask a question.
Sure. Yeah, I'm the guy who runs around, gives the mic to people. So if it actually will make it there, we'll find out.